Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Morning Brew. I am very excited for this one, but before we really get into it, shout out to my roommate and homie Finn for the dope ass shirt that he gave to me, and also shout out to the fact that I finally got some reusable K cups, and I have a bean grinder, so I can actually, use my fancy beans that my mom and sister gave me after their trip to Europe. I know, right? Where was my invite at? But anyway, that's besides the point. Hope you all are doing well today. Don't worry about the hair right now. I got it. I got it in a clip. Don't worry. Your favorite long-haired internet baddie did not cut his hair. Don't even worry about that. We're chilling on that, guys. We're chilling. But I hope you all are having an amazing day. Pay no attention if I sway or anything. I'm filming this in the studio and everything, in the studio just being the attic of the house me and my roommates in. But we just got a new desk chair and it is pretty comfortable, and I'm just swaying around basically, staying active. Hopefully you've all read the title of the video, so you know that we'll be talking today about my hopes for the Final Fantasy set releasing this upcoming summer for Magic the Gathering. To be completely transparent, once again, with all of you, I thought this video would actually come out much later. I obviously wanted to release this video before previews for the set began, and I assumed that would be happening months from now. But I saw a post recently saying that previews would begin in just 2 weeks, and I immediately got to work on this video. So let's hope that this video somehow comes out before all of the previews. It's definitely been a hot minute since I've made one of these, but I feel like I say that in almost every time I make an episode, so nothing really new there. What is new is that many things have happened in the Magic landscape since we've last talked, including bannings in Commander, some that I agree with and some I don't agree with. Rules involving combat have changed. The Commander Rules Committee has disbanded, which gives Wizards complete control over the one format that was essentially controlled by the fan base. More and more secret layers have dropped. The standard format has changed completely with the release of Foundations, and finally Universes Beyond completely changing the landscape of what's to come with Magic's future. So, a lot, to say the least. However, this video will not be covering all of the things I have just previously mentioned. We will be covering the Final Fantasy set, or at least the knowledge that we currently have of the Final Fantasy set. So we'll be covering the following: a little bit of history concerning the series, information we currently have readily available, and finally, and most importantly, what I would like coming out of the Universes Beyond Final Fantasy set, including a couple card designs that I have created concerning cards that I want to see most. Let me turn my computer audio down before anything so I don't get any stupid notifications. First and foremost, I just want to say that I am a big Final Fantasy fan. I've only played a small handful of the games throughout this magnificent series, and I've only beaten 2 of them. Those being the very first Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy VII. However, I have seen playthroughs of most of the games within the series, and I'm no expert on the series. However, I am still extremely excited for what's to come out of this set, almost more than any other set that has been announced for this year. The series first premiered back on the NES on December 18th, 1987, developed by the company formerly known as Squaresoft, now Square Enix. The series is titled Final Fantasy because of the fact that the company had tried producing games before, but none never really took off. However, they had one final chance, hence why the series is titled as such. And with that final chance, they released one of the most infamous and well-beloved game series in all of history. Final Fantasy is by no means the first JRPG. However, it is the first JRPG to set a new precedent on the design of the battle screen that most turn-based RPGs would follow moving forward. There is so much more we could talk about concerning the series, including development, the fact that this is an anthology series, the various spin-offs of a ton of games, other media types including movies and books, and we could even talk about the various tropes that are reused throughout the series. But we're here to talk about cards and not video games. If you are interested in knowing the history of this magnificent series, I'll have various videos detailing that story and a few others as well linked down below in the description for you guys to enjoy. Not only is the development story fascinating, but I find many other components of the series just as, if not more, interesting. Alright, now that we've moved on from that, here is what little information we do know concerning the Final Fantasy Universes Beyond set at this very moment of recording. The set releases June 13th, 2025. It will be a full set, just like Baldur's Gate or Lord of the Rings. There will also be 4 Commander Precons going along with everything. No cards, to my knowledge, have been leaked/spoiled, but we have gotten a couple artworks of cards, including, and I just want to state this ahead of time, apologies if I mess up any pronunciations of names within the series, or anyone concerning the series. Just bear with me if you would. We have Lightning, Army of One, Emmett, Selch, Unsundered, and Together Forever. Wizards of the Coast has stated that they will be showcasing cards throughout the entirety of the series. However, I do think Final Fantasy VII will be given the most treatment, as not only does this game hold the most spin-offs, a complete reboot of the game, an animated feature, and is by far the most popular within the series. We're not here to talk about the most popular Final Fantasy game. We're here to talk about Magic. And with that being said, almost immediately after we were given the readily available news of the Final Fantasy set, I began theorizing/creating cards for the characters that not only do I really want in the set, as well as mechanics and how those cards would not only work, but attempting to make them as thematic as possible to fit said characters. I will say that most of the cards I've created are concepts, and an actual card designer I know could do so much better than I. But I really wanted to give it a shot, and I know going into this, all of my cards are very much lacking the fluidity of how a Magic card reads. Mine are very clunky and hard to understand at times, so please keep all of that in mind. I know this was a very long and contrived explanation, so now we can officially move on to the cards that I have designed for Final Fantasies 1, 4, and 6. 6. Forgot my ASL there for a moment. Starting off, we have the Warriors of Light from Final Fantasy I. At the beginning of the flagship game, you choose 4 party members from a total of 6. All options derive from classic RPG classes, including the following: Warrior, Black Belt, Thief, Black Mage, White Mage, and Red Mage. Halfway through the game, you have the capability to class change your party, leveling them up to the next stage of their various class. So with keeping classic RPG elements in mind and the class change, I have designed a flip card for each of them, showcasing the change the players go on throughout their adventure. For these specific cards, I have created a new ability that already exists in Magic. I'm reusing the level up ability. We'll be using the card Joraga Tree Speaker as an example. So you cast this creature for 1 green mana, and it begins at level 0. you are able to pay its level up cost to not only increase its power and toughness, but also its abilities as well. My level up ability is a little bit different. After fulfilling a specific criteria, aka gaining experience, the creature levels up, adding a +1/+1 counter to that creature, and after fulfilling the transformation requirements, you can flip it over while keeping its counters. Unless you guys would think that's a little too powerful, instead of wasting your time even more, let's just get on with the cards. Alright, first off, we have the Warrior, also known as the Fighter. So for two generic mana and 1 red mana, you get a 3/3 legendary creature human warrior with equipment spells cost 1 generic mana less to cast. For each equipment attached to the Fighter, level up, add a +1/+1 counter to the Fighter. Upon reaching level 5 or greater, you transform the Fighter, transforming it into the Knight, which is a 6/6 human knight with trample. The equip cost is now 0 for everything, and you may activate equip abilities at any given time. Now, obviously, these cards are heavily based off of Pure Steel Paladin and Leonin Shakiri. As you'll come to see, a lot of these cards are derived and inspired by previous cards mentioned, but add a little bit of a spin on it. I thought it would be a cool idea to have a mono red equipment matters commander, because the whole thing with the Knight and Fighter Warrior in Final Fantasy 1 is that you can do a couple little things with them. Alright, next up we actually have the card that I am most proud of with its design and everything. It is the White Mage. So for 2 of any color and a white mana, you get a 1/4 legendary creature, human cleric, and whenever you gain life, you gain that much life plus 2. If you were to gain 5 or more life within a turn, you will level up White Mage, adding a +1/+1 counter to them. Upon reaching level 5 or greater, you transform White Mage into the White Wizard, which is a 3/5 human cleric. Whenever you gain life, gain twice that much life, and you have 2 tapping abilities. For double white and tapping this creature, you can regenerate target creature, and then you can also do 2 white mana and tapping it to destroy target tapped undead creature, and undead creatures are skeletons and zombies. So the reason why I think this is a really cool card is not only because, like, the whole point of the cleric within the first game and most Final Fantasy games is that they're your healer, your designated healer, really. They will get the best healing magic. Not that other characters in Final Fantasy 1 specifically can't use white magic. The red mage and also eventually the knight can eventually use white magic, but the white mage and the white wizard have the access to most of the white spells, aka just like the healing spells, but also which is why they have the regenerate target creature, which is more so a nod to the fact that they can revive a party member. And the other thing that alludes to the game is destroying the undead creature, which is really cool because if you use white magic on an undead creature in the first game, which I'm pretty sure, like, I'm almost for certain that you can use a white mana spell, or not a white mana spell, but you can use a a holy spell or a white spell to destroy an undead creature, or at least deal massive damage to a undead creature, which that's kind of why I like this card design so much, because it's actually paying homage to the original game. Not that other cards don't, but I feel like this was the best one that I've created, at least personally. Alright, next we have the Black Belt. So for 1 mana and then a white and red mana, you get a 2/1 human monk with prowess. Whenever Black Belt deals damage, level up. And this could be combat damage or this could be damage to a creature, damage to an opponent, just damage in general. And then when Black Belt becomes level 5 or greater, transform it into the Master, which is a 5/4 human monk, once again, with double strike. When a Master deals damage to a player, Untap all creatures. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase, followed by an additional main phase. Spells you cast targeting the master copy an additional time. So, as I'm literally just now reading this, this is pretty OP and everything, but I personally wanted to make a monk really powerful because, at least in my opinion, and again, my own opinion, monks aren't as powerful as I would like them to be in Magic. Monks are one of my favorite creature types, but I feel like we've never specifically gotten a monk commander specifically that is really like using monks to their fullest extent. There have been a couple examples that I may or may not show on screen that I've attempted to create, but like all of them seem to fall short for me at some point in time, and I guess just for me, I would like to see an overpowered monk commander. Coffee break, you know? Alright, next we have the Thief, which is for 2 colorless mana and a black mana. I'm sure you guys are noticing a trend by now. For a 1/2 human rogue, whenever Thief deals combat damage, create a treasure token. Whenever 1 or more treasure tokens are created, enter the battlefield specifically. Not created, but enter the battlefield. Level up. And then when the Thief reaches level 5, transform it into the Ninja, which is a 3/4 human ninja, unblockable. When Ninja deals combat damage to a player, gain control of a target artifact or enchantment that player controls. Treasures under your control produce twice as much mana. So, specifically for the Thief, I wanted to take inspiration from the Horde Robber, which is actually in one of my Voltron decks, actually. Just a really fun, cool card. I also wanted to create, with this in mind, I wanted to create a mono black deck that would basically win off of Revel and Riches super easily. And also, I mean, like, mono black treasures is not exactly outside of the color wheel, but it's not exactly like something that's like common if that makes sense. Like there's a couple mono black cards that make treasures and have to actually deal with treasures, and you know what I mean. But like I just really like this card at the end of the day. And also with the Ninja, I'm taking inspiration from Thieving Skydiver, just because of the fact that a little motif in the Final Fantasy games and a lot of other games because of Final Fantasy is that when a thief or a rogue character, they have the ability to pickpocket said enemy and hypothetically take an item from them. It is a chance, but screw that. We're not doing that. All right, next off, we have the Black Mage. So for 2 of any color and a blue, you get a 0/3 wizard with instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, level up Black Mage. Level 5 or greater, transform Black Mage. And then you get the Black Wizard. So 1/4 legendary wizard. Each turn you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard for free if its casting cost is less than or equal to the amount of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. That spell is then exiled after cast. So, if I'm going to be completely honest, this is the card that I am the least proud of and everything. At the end of it, like, I felt really pressed for time after a while, and more than anything, I want to get this video out for you guys. So, corners had to be cut, and this was one of the corners that got cut. It really sucks because the Black Mage is the most iconic character within Final Fantasy, and I did them so dirty, and I'm so sorry about that. Like, look at this he's just a little guy. Like, I could have done so much better, but oh well. Moving on to the Red Mage. This is actually a design I struggled with for a while, but for some random reason, I stayed up working on this video, and it just came to me like lightning in a bottle, or however the saying goes, because I'm really bad at those. So the Red Mage is for Jeskai, so 1 white, 1 blue, and 1 red. You get a 2/3 human wizard. Whenever you draw a card, deal 1 damage to any target or gain 1 life. Whenever you draw one or more cards at once, level up Red Mage. So I made that kind of as fair as possible, because if you draw 5 cards at once, then you just then you just get the 5 +1/+1 counters, which then you just be able to transform it. And I didn't want it to be that easy, but I still wanted it to be a little easy. And then you finally get the Red Wizard, which is a 4/4 human wizard. Whenever you draw 3 or more cards at once, you may discard your hand and deal damage to any target equal to the amount of cards discarded. Instants and sorceries you control have lifelink. So with this whole thing, I took inspiration from the fact that the Red Mage has access to both white magic and black magic within the first game, which makes them a lot more of a tactician. You really get to build your Red Mage and Red Wizard however you want. If you want them to be a little bit more of a healer, you can do that. If you want them to be a little bit more of a damage dealer, you can do that. It's kind of whatever your choice ends up being at the end of the day, which is really, really cool, and I like that a whole lot. So with that, I obviously took inspiration from Firesong and Sunspeaker. They give red instants and sorceries lifelink, which is cool. I specifically wanted just to say all instants and sorceries, because it's like, why not? And then I really liked the idea, of whenever you draw 3 or more cards, like, you can just discard your hand and then just deal damage. Like, I just thought that was a really cool idea. And then with the Red Mage, kind of with it being a tactician character, I wanted to highlight the fact that they can either deal damage or heal allies, which is why it's deal 1 damage to any target or gain 1 life. It's not both, it's not and or, it's specifically or. Get that right. So we've covered all of the original characters from the games you can choose from. Next, I would love for there to be an enchantment showcasing the journey the Warriors of Light went on, highlighting a class trope from each of the respective classes. With it showcasing the journey our heroes go on, I initially thought a Saga card would fit best. However, I eventually decided against it for my design, as a major plot point within the story is traveling through time, and I just couldn't quite figure out how to showcase that into a saga. I'm sure the design philosophy exists, and my smooth brain just couldn't comprehend such an idea. So we have the Warriors of Light enchantment. So for Wooburg, or for 1 mana of any color, you get a legendary enchantment. On your first main phase, choose a mode that hasn't been chosen yet. Once all modes have been chosen, return this card back to your hand, highlighting the time travel mechanic. Kind of, they just go back and forth and everything. So we have gain 5 life, draw 3 cards, deal 3 damage to all creatures. Creatures you control gain 1 keyword of your choosing until end of turn. And I just wrote that down because I kind of ran out of room for the card, but it would be between like a set amount of specific abilities. So like the common ones like Trample, Death Touch, Lifelink, Vigilance, Flying. The common ones, not like Skulk or anything. We're not getting any too brazy out here. Then you can create 3 treasures, or 1 creature under your control fights another target creature you don't control. So I'm sure you guys can easily figure out which one belongs to what, because it's kind of self-explanatory at the end of the day. Alright, the next idea is very much a concept and is by no means a finished product. Again, those cutting corners that I mentioned earlier. But I would love to see a set highlight the 4 main dungeon bosses protecting the 4 crystals that our Warriors of Light are tasked with collecting throughout the main story. I feel like the best way to highlight such an idea is with a battle card type. Personally, I have never used a battle in any of my deck. A few of my playgroup members in Pittsburgh have used 1 or 2 within decks, so I have some familiarity with them, but designing one, let alone one that actually works, is completely out of my jurisdiction. Battles, for those who don't know, are cards that you give to your opponent that you want destroyed. It is another flip card that holds a pseudo health bar, just like a Planeswalker would. Once that number reaches 0 or lower, you now control the other and more powerful side on your side of the battlefield. My concept for the front half showcasing the dungeon itself and one of its various quirks, while the back half highlights the actual boss itself. However, the boss itself only sticks around for a short time because each of them have a phase out ability. So after a certain number of turns they phase out, but then they'd come back as the dungeon side or the front half of the battle card, and then you'd have to do the song and dance all over again. So hypothetically, just making these bosses super powerful, almost like they just deal massive damage or they have a very strong ability, but it only sticks around for a short period of time. The main reason I wanted this to phase out is simply, once again, showcasing the time travel plot point. So the 4 dungeon bosses are as followed. We have the Lich harboring the Earth Crystal in the Cavern of Earth, funnily enough. Then we have Marlilith controlling the Crystal of Fire within Mount Golg. Then we have the Kraken with the Crystal of Water inside the Sunken Shrine. And finally, we have the big bad of them all, Tiamat, holding the Air Crystal hostage on top of the Flying Fortress. So, we have just covered all of the cards that I would love to see from Final Fantasy I specifically. But now let's move on to Final Fantasy IV for our next 2 designs. Alright, first off, we have Cecil, the main character of the game, who goes on a pretty cool arc in my opinion. He starts out as a Dark Knight, but throughout the course of the game, aka like the first fourth of the game, really, he becomes a Paladin. I do wish the game itself played with the concept of the darkness within Cecil more, but this is far from a review of Final Fantasy IV. The concept for Cecil's card is fairly simple. The card itself showcases the light and dark within Cecil. He will definitely be a Voltron card, but specifically I would love to build him around using swords, because who doesn't love cool swords? For his colors, I really wanted this to be an Orzhov creature, not only because it fits the theme we're going for, but I've never built an Orzhov Voltron specific strategy, and I just thought it would be really cool at the end of the day. So we have Cecil. For 2 of any color, a white and a black, you get a 3/3 legendary creature human paladin. Cecil receives a +2/+1 for each black aura or equipment attached to it, and Cecil receives a +1/+2 for each white aura or equipment attached to it. Now, this card is kind of OP if you think about it, because if you use like a hybrid one, he gets both of them. But that's also kind of the point. I wanted to make these cards overpowered, but also like maybe not overpowered, because like it is a Voltron deck. So if you blow him up, your strategy is kind of scrapped and you'd have to rebuild again and again and again. And with it being Orzhov, you will have access to treasures and artifacts and other ways of producing mana, but you will never really have the most lands at the table compared to a green player, at least. And specifically with the +2/+1 and the +1/+2, I wanted to take inspiration from 2 very classic enchantment auras from Magic. For the life of me, however, could not find the names of them. So hopefully future Casey has found them at some point and they're on screen right now, but I have no idea. I'm at a loss. And if I didn't find them and if they're not showcased right here, somebody in the comments, like, please let me know what I'm missing here, because it's very frustrating to say the least. Alright, the next character we will be highlighting is Edge. Not one of my favorite characters by any means, but I think my concept for him is pretty cool. Edge is a ninja, and one motif that seems to always come back within the series is the idea of ninjas throwing items to deal massive damage to a opponent. And that's basically the whole idea. Sacrificing your artifacts to Edge to deal damage to your opponents and their creatures. So without further ado, we have Edge. For 1 of any color and Mardu, so a white, black, and red, you get a 3/3 legendary creature human ninja with haste, which is pretty cool because like ninjas are typically very fast and their speed is very high. So, with a tap ability that states sacrifice target artifact you control, dealing damage to any target equal to that artifact's casting cost. So, you can't just put a bunch of zero cost artifacts and deal damage. They need to cost something. And I think this guy's pretty cool. And I obviously have taken inspiration from 2 cards, that being the background Street Urchin, which states, commander creatures you own have pay 1 generic mana, sacrifice another creature or an artifact, this creature deals 1 damage to any target. Pretty cool. And also off of Jean Johnson, Chaos Crafter. For Marty, you get a 3/3 Gnome Artificer with haste, and he has 2 tap abilities. First one stating sacrifice an artifact creature, create 2 treasure tokens, and the other one being sacrifice a non-creature artifact, create 2 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature tokens. To round off my more conceptualized concepts, we will be moving on to my favorite game within the series. I know that statement is a little crazy to say as I've never beaten it, but there's so many things about this game that draw me in and completely take over my brain. That game being Final Fantasy VI. I could talk about this game for literal hours and why I love it so much, but instead I've created 2 cards for my favorite characters within the game, and also maybe in the entire series if I'm going to be completely honest. The first of those being Sabin the Monk. Within Final Fantasy VI, each playable character has a standalone skill that does not carry over to another. One character can steal items, while another character has Bushido abilities. Sabin has blitzes, which change depending on the button combination that you input into your controller. I love combos, especially within fighting games. Taking the time to figure out each character's specific combos is one of my favorite things about those games, and my card for Sabin highlights this mechanic. So we have Sabin. For 1 of any color and Jeskai, so white, blue, and red, you get a 5/4 human monk with many different abilities, and each of them highlight a specific blitz from the game. So first off, we have Pummel. Whenever you cast 2 creature spells within a turn, Sabin fights another target creature, and Pummel is a blitz that just deals a lot of damage to one opponent. The next one is Suplex, which is probably the funniest one, as you guys will probably see, of Sabin literally suplexing a fucking train. Yeah, this dude is sick. Whenever you cast an artifact and an enchantment, Sabin deals damage to another target creature equal to his power. Then we have Chakra, which has the ability to heal all of your allies. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy that spell. And then finally we have Phantom Rush, which is the most powerful blitz that you can get, and you can only reach it getting to like level 70 or something, which is crazy. Whenever you cast 1 spell of each card type, take an extra turn. So I hope you guys can kind of understand the concept I'm going for here. With Sabin's button combo abilities, it's a different combo every time. They might start out like similarly, but they grow and grow as time goes on. And with that, I wanted to highlight the idea of if you cast different cards, aka if you combo 2 different card types together, then you do a different thing. And also, if you really think about it, casting 1 of each card type specifically, and not as in like a battle or a saga, I just mean like specifically, so creature, artifact, enchantment, instant, sorcery. I might be missing one, but any of those, I'm not going to count lands with that. Again, ran out of space for the card, so I couldn't exactly explain that, but hopefully you can just understand from the description alone. Now, in hindsight, this card is completely unfair. All of these cards are just concepts, and I by no means will be using them in any playgroup. Unless somebody is really cool with it, then what's up? What's good? Let's play a game with my boy Sabin. But hopefully you can see the idea I'm going for. Combining your spells, aka combining your button combinations in a different order, will inhibit a different blitz. Plus, I just really wanted my favorite character in the series to be at least a little bit broken, if I'm allowed to do that. Favoritism. Alright, now this will be the final card that we will be going over that's at least a somewhat full concept. And that final card is of, quite honestly, my favorite character within the series. He is none other than the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VI, the deranged clown himself, Kefka. For 1 mana of any color and a blue, black, and red, aka Grixis, you get a 2/4 legendary creature clown with Death Touch, Indestructible, and Hexproof. If Kefka is the only creature on the battlefield, transform them. So, let me explain why I gave him these specific keyword abilities. So, Death Touch because, in the game, Kefka literally poisons an entire castle. True villain type shit, in my opinion. Next off, Indestructible, because regardless of how many times you fight him or somebody else fights him, he always gets back up and comes back. So he is seemingly indestructible. And finally, Hexproof. Regardless of how many times somebody tries to touch him or get near him or attack him, he seems almost untouchable. And finally, the reason why I gave him this specific ability of him being the only one is because of a very, very specific plot point within the game that I will not be sharing because I think everybody should experience it for themselves, whether it be playing it or watching a playthrough of somebody play it. That moment in video game history truly is the Empire Strikes Back of video game moments. In my opinion. I'm sure you guys can all understand what I'm saying or what I'm trying to say with that without spoiling anything. But with that being said, let's move on to the other side of Kefka, being Kefka Godhood. He is an 11/11 legendary creature god with Hexproof and Indestructible, with the ability Dancing Mad, which is paying homage to the theme that plays within the final boss fight. The game can neither be won nor lost. You may pay life to cast spells rather than pay their mana cost. So obviously, I took inspiration from Bolas's Citadel with that final ability, but specifically the game neither winning nor losing is simply because of the fact that you're fighting a literal god. Regardless of what happens, there really is no winning or losing. There is just a victor at the end of the day. And to kind of talk about the other side once again, with the fact that he has Hexproof and Indestructible, I really feel like building him off of using specifically board wipe cards would be really, really cool. Just a board wipe commander, yes, but a board wipe commander that specifically becomes like, oh shit, like, this is the big bad. This is the guy that we should have been paying attention to the whole time, which is, again, paying homage to the video game. Now, this card is absolutely insane, and whether it's good or bad is kind of to be discussed. It's definitely not the best card in the world in terms of Magic, but I think it's a really cool card. So specifically why I gave him a 11/11 power and toughness is because of angel numbers. I don't really know much about them to begin with, but I was trying to find something thematic for him, and I came across this one, and I'm sure future Casey, could you please just have the 11/11 angel numbers up on top so I also know what they mean and everything. I saw them once and I was like, that's the one we're going for. That's it. And I really feel like having the 11/11 with him is just really cool thematically and everything. So yeah, that is Kefka, and now that I'm kind of reading over it again, I am insanely proud of this card. So creating all of these cards was both fun and challenging. I've created fake cards with my friends in the past before. Phrasing and magic grammar aside, I feel like these concepts I've created for the Final Fantasy set at least somewhat are tangible, at the very least. Now, granted, they definitely are not finished products by any means, but as a somewhat fledged out idea, I'm pretty proud of myself. Before we end things off, I would like to mention a couple other things I'd like to see out of the set. They are nothing more than once at the end of the day, so if I somehow get even just one of these, I will be over the moon with joy. So those wants are as followed. We have Sid. Sid is a recurring character within most of the Final Fantasy games. Not only would I love to see Sid as a card, but I think it would be very clever if there was a different artwork for each of the different Sids throughout the series, but the same card that does the exact same thing, just a different artwork. I talked a little bit about the 4 elemental crystals earlier, and I would very much like to see them as cards, whether they're artifacts, enchantments, lands, or even somehow legendary creatures. They are one of the main reoccurring tropes within the series, and I would love to see cards for them specifically. Rydia is a mage from Final Fantasy IV, and part of her story is that her village was burned down, so she obviously has a fear of fire, and refuses to use any fire magic. I would love to see 1, if not 2 cards with Rydia, one showcasing her when she was a young mage afraid of fire, and one of her eventually overcoming her fears and moving forward. The original game, in my opinion, doesn't convey this character arc very well. She sort of just gets over it and is pressured into melting a block of ice with fire, but a card desire could do her arc so much justice, and I would love to see it. As I mentioned earlier with Sabin, his skill is known as blitzes and are for his and his alone. For all the other cards concerning the protagonists of Final Fantasy VI, I would love to see if they would also highlight their unique skills per each character. The final want, and this is 100% a long shot, but if it were to somehow work, I'd be insanely ecstatic. So much so that I'd scrap every single one of my wants and the concepts for this one particular thing. More than anything, I want there to be artwork made by Yoshitaka Amano on my Magic cards. I've used a lot of his artwork already throughout this video. He is one of my favorite artists, period. Not only has he designed characters and graphics for the series, but he even designed the iconic Final Fantasy logo showcased within every game in the series. Not only has he worked on this series, but his works have transcended in many mediums and franchises. It would make my inner child shine if I could somehow own a Magic card with his artwork. But again, I probably shouldn't get my hopes up, but I can always hope. And with that being said, my cup is beginning to run low. So thank you all so much for taking the time to hear me yap about 2 of my favorite things and 2 things that I hold very near and dear to my heart. Have an amazing rest of your day, drink some coffee, and play some Magic. I'll be seeing you guys sometime later. So, with that being said, peace.